Mark Carney selected not elected. That's the reality facing Canada today. The former Bank of Canada governor became Prime Minister without a single vote from the public, raising serious questions about democratic representation. Is this really how our parliamentary system should work? With the federal election scheduled for April 28, 2025, you'll soon have a chance to decide who truly deserves to lead. Should Carney even be called Prime Minister right now? How does his vision for Canada's future compare to Conservative Pierre Poilievre and the NDP's Jagmeet Singh? This video delivers the balanced facts you need about retirement security, healthcare access, and economic stability without political spin. Let's start with a shocking fact. Mark Carney is about to become Canada's Prime Minister without winning a single vote from the general public. How is this even possible? Welcome to the fascinating and sometimes perplexing world of Canadian politics, where our Prime Ministers aren't directly chosen by citizens. Instead, we operate under a constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary democracy that follows the British Westminster model. This creates a situation where someone like Carney can step into the highest office without most Canadians ever casting a ballot with his name on it. This isn't some constitutional loophole or democratic failure. It's exactly how our system was designed to work. In Canada, executive authority formally rests with the Crown, represented by the Governor-General, who acts on the advice of the Prime Minister and Cabinet. When a Prime Minister steps down mid-term, their party selects a new leader, who then takes the reins of government. That's precisely what happened on March 10, 2025, when Mark Carney secured the Liberal Party leadership with an overwhelming 85.9% of the vote on the first ballot. But here's the catch. Only Liberal Party members participated in this vote. In a country of nearly 40 million people, the decision about who would become our next Prime Minister came down to a tiny fraction of Canadians who hold Liberal Party memberships. For many Canadians accustomed to the American system that dominates our media, this seems fundamentally undemocratic. Americans directly elect their president in a nationwide vote. In Canada, we elect local members of Parliament who form our government, and the leader of the party commanding the most support in the House of Commons becomes Prime Minister. The formal handover process that will install Carney as our 24th Prime Minister involves a carefully choreographed constitutional dance. Justin Trudeau will formally tender his resignation to the Governor-General, who will then invite Carney to form a government. No general election, no nationwide vote, just a changing of the guard based on internal party politics. What makes Carney's ascension particularly unusual is that he's never held elected office and doesn't currently have a seat in Parliament. Unlike most new Prime Ministers who at least served as MPs, Carney will be leading a country without ever having won a single election at any level. To address this unusual situation, Carney will need to secure a seat either through a by-election, when an MP steps aside to create a vacancy, or wait until the next general election. Our system only requires that a Prime Minister be able to command the confidence of the House. In practical terms, this means having the support of enough MPs to pass legislation and survive confidence votes. Being an elected MP yourself, that's merely a convention, not a constitutional requirement. If this arrangement sounds familiar, it's because we've been here before. Previous Prime Ministers like John Turner and Kim Campbell similarly took office without elections following the resignations of Pierre Trudeau and Brian Mulroney, respectively. Both led their parties for only brief periods before calling elections, and both suffered devastating defeats at the polls, highlighting the risks of taking power without a direct mandate from voters. For Carney, timing will be everything. Technically, he has until October 20th, 2025 to call an election. That gives him a maximum window of about 7 months to establish himself in the role before facing voters. Most political analysts expected him to call an election much sooner, which did happen. Now the election will take place on April 28th, 2025, and it is likely trying to capitalize on what's known as the new leader bounce, the temporary surge in popularity that often accompanies a leadership change. The bigger question hanging over Canadian democracy is whether this process truly reflects the will of voters. When Canadians cast their ballots in the last election, they voted for Liberal candidates with the understanding that Justin Trudeau would be Prime Minister. Now they're getting Carney instead. someone with vastly different experience, priorities, and leadership style. Some democratic theorists argue this represents a fundamental disconnect between voter expectations and constitutional reality. Others point out that parliamentary democracy has always been about electing parties rather than personalities, and the flexibility to change leaders between elections is a feature, not a bug. For Carney specifically, the lack of electoral experience presents both challenges and opportunities. As former governor of both the Bank of Canada and the Bank of England, he brings unparalleled economic credentials but lacks the political battle scars that most prime ministers accumulate through years of electoral campaigns and parliamentary debates. Quick pause. If you're enjoying this video, we'd really appreciate it if you could like and subscribe to the channel. Did you know over 98% of viewers watch without subscribing? Subscribing is free, and it helps us create more content you love, so go ahead and hit that button. It only takes a second. Thanks so much. And now back to the video. Carney's decorated financial resume might impress international observers, but Poilievre has transformed this elite experience into his opponent's greatest vulnerability. What happens when a former central banker, who's never faced voters, squares off against a career politician who's built his entire brand fighting against the economic establishment? Their competing visions for Canada's future couldn't be more fundamentally opposed. The battle lines between these two economic philosophies are already being drawn in stark relief. Poilievre hasn't minced words, directly accusing Carney of being willing to sell out Canada for his personal profit. It's a message that's finding receptive ears among voters who've grown increasingly frustrated with their economic circumstances under Liberal leadership. Many Canadians struggling with rising costs see Carney not as a financial savior but as part of the very system they believe has failed them. Looking at their actual economic proposals reveals just how different their approaches truly are. Carney's vision centres on building up Canada's workforce through targeted investment and training. He's announced an apprenticeship grant offering up to $8,000 to incentivize Canadians to enter skilled trades programs, a direct government intervention aimed at addressing anticipated labor shortages in construction and specialized trades. But that's not all. Carney plans to double funding for the Union Training and Innovation Program from $25 million to $50 million, demonstrating his belief that government has a central role to play in workforce development. He's even committed $20 million for capital funding to colleges, specifically to build new training spaces for apprenticeships. The plan reflects his comprehensive approach to talent development, connecting workers with unions, educational institutions, employers, and provincial partners. Poilievre offers a dramatically different prescription for Canada's economic challenges. Rather than creating new programs, his focus is on dismantling what he sees as bureaucratic obstacles to growth. He's pledged to cut 25% of federal regulations, what he calls red tape, within just 2 years of taking office. According to Poilievre, these regulations cost businesses at least $51 billion annually and have stalled major infrastructure projects and investment. The Conservative leader's approach includes implementing a 2-for-1 rule that would require eliminating 2 existing regulations for every new one introduced. To ensure this actually happens, he wants to pass legislation requiring the Auditor General to verify these administrative changes every year. It's a vision predicated on the belief that government itself is the primary obstacle to prosperity. Their healthcare approaches illustrate this philosophical divide even more clearly. While specific details of Carney's healthcare policies remain to be fully outlined, his approach is expected to follow the Liberal tradition of negotiating health transfers with provinces. Maintaining federal involvement and oversight in how healthcare dollars are spent, Poilievre, by contrast, has promised to remove federal conditions on health funding altogether. This would give provinces far more autonomy in allocating healthcare resources without Ottawa's input. A fundamental shift that reflects his broader belief in decentralized decision-making and reduced federal involvement. The housing affordability crisis, a top concern for many Canadians, further highlights their contrasting approaches. Under Carney, the Liberals are focusing on increasing housing supply through government programs and targeted supports to help specific groups access housing. Poilievre and the Conservatives, meanwhile, promised to slash regulatory barriers to construction, aiming to reduce both the costs and timelines associated with building new homes. For Carney, the housing solution involves strategic government intervention. For Poilievre, it requires government to get out of the way. One sees government as the solution, the other sees it as the problem. This fundamental difference extends to virtually every area of policy. Carney's vision for indigenous communities exemplifies his approach. He's committed to working directly with these communities to raise awareness about his new apprenticeship grant, ensuring traditionally underserved populations can access these opportunities. It's part of his broader belief that government programs, properly designed and implemented, can address systemic inequities. The contrast between these two men isn't just about specific policies, it's about their entire worldview. Carney, through his global banking experience, approaches problems with technocratic solutions, seeking to fine-tune and improve existing systems. Poilievre, shaped by decades in conservative politics, sees those very systems as fundamentally flawed and in need of dramatic reduction. As Canadians consider their options, they're not simply choosing between two leaders with different policy preferences. They're deciding between competing theories about how economies function, how societies should organize themselves, and what role government should play in addressing national challenges. While Carney and Poilievre battle for the spotlight with their contrasting economic visions, there's a third approach, reshaping Canada's political landscape, that deserves our attention. Jagmeet Singh has made a strategic calculation that could fundamentally alter how Canadians think about voting and what constitutes political success in our parliamentary system. Singh has quietly revolutionized the NDP's approach. Rather than promising Canadians an NDP majority government, a statistical long shot given Canada's electoral history, he's embraced a more pragmatic strategy. The NDP leader now focuses on what his party can actually deliver through strategic influence in a minority parliament. This isn't surrendering, it's acknowledging political reality while maximizing impact. We can push for real change without holding the reins of power, Singh has effectively argued through his recent positioning. This strategic pivot reveals something fascinating about Singh's political calculation. In our parliamentary system, a focused bloc of MPs with clear policy priorities can sometimes achieve more tangible results than an opposition party that's perpetually campaigning for majority status it rarely achieves. Singh's framing of these issues stands in stark contrast to his rivals. While Carney speaks of economic stability through expertise and Poilievre promises prosperity through deregulation, Singh consistently frames his proposals through the lens of corporate accountability, his central argument. Large companies must contribute more to social programs that benefit ordinary Canadians. This accountability framework extends to Singh's housing strategy, which uniquely focuses on non-market solutions like co-ops and non-profit housing developments. For seniors facing housing insecurity, these models offer stability that purely market-based approaches can't guarantee. When housing becomes an investment vehicle, Singh argues, those on fixed incomes inevitably lose ground. His alternative vision presents housing as a social good first, financial asset second. What makes Singh's approach fascinating is how it reframes the very definition of political success. Where traditional political narratives focus on winning majority governments, Singh's model suggests influence can be more valuable than outright power when wielded strategically. In a parliamentary system where minority governments are increasingly common, this strategy may prove prescient. The gamble, of course, is whether voters will embrace this incremental approach or dismiss it as lacking ambition. Singh's strategy requires Canadians to think differently about their votes, not as backing a potential prime minister, but as strengthening a bargaining position that can deliver specific outcomes they value. For voters who've grown cynical about sweeping campaign promises that evaporate post-election, Singh's transparent transactional approach offers something different, a clear accounting of what NDP votes can realistically achieve. Whether this proves politically viable remains to be seen, but it certainly offers a distinct alternative to the Carney-Poilievre dichotomy. When Canadians head to the polls on April 28, 2025, they'll face a pivotal choice between three contrasting visions for their nation's future. The election represents more than just a selection between personalities. It's a referendum on retirement security and economic stability during challenging times. For those planning their golden years, these policy differences aren't abstract. They're deeply personal. Will Canada embrace Carney's emphasis on stable institutions, Poilievre's vision of less government intervention, or Singh's focus on expanded social supports? The ballot box question transcends party loyalty. Voters must consider which approach will best serve not just their immediate needs, but Canada's long-term democratic values and collective future. Thank you for watching. How do you feel about Mark Carney becoming Prime Minister without a public vote? Does this reflect the strengths of our parliamentary system, or should Canadians always have a direct say in who leads the country? We're just weeks away from a critical moment. On April 28, 2025, Canadians will head to the polls to decide who should truly lead the nation. Your vote has never mattered more. Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear your perspective. And if this video helped you understand the issues more clearly, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you won't miss any updates leading up to Election Day. Your support helps bring thoughtful, balanced content to viewers who care about Canada's future. Want to dig deeper before you vote? Just click on any of the videos now showing on your screen.